Pray to the gods of life, of Facebook. Zoom says we are live. Facebook is thinking about it. Yes, we are. Good morning.
Good morning, Facebook and Cecilia. And
how is everyone this morning?
it's Friday.
It's Friday indeed. Yes, yes, yes. So good, good.
There we go.
Did it work?
Yep, I'm just sharing it.
Just doing the admin stuff.
Yeah, I think that is
Another week. Another weekend.
It is.
Another trip to Sainsbury's.
Oh, it's nearly Easter weekend. Next
When is Easter weekend?
next week, I think. Hang on. Possibly next weekend. I think it's early this year, isn't it?
I've got no idea when Easter is. I'm sorry. I only know when Christmas is. Because that comes with presents.
Okay. Yeah, I think Easter weekend is this weekend. I know the schools break up on Thursday. Here we go. Easter weekend 2021. Yeah, it is this weekend coming. 4th of April. Sorry, next weekend coming, 4th of April. So yeah, it's quite early this year. But we are allowed out. So hopefully, or at least we're allowed people in the gardens and things. So hopefully we can do just a little Easter egg hunt or something with the children. And
once you finish with that, we're coming to visit.
Yeah. Well, no, we can't we? Which will be fun. What is it? 6 people in a garden, or 6 people in the garden, or 2 families, I think it is. I haven't kept up very well with what the rules are, but I will find out as it's about to change, which is very exciting. So I think we've got a few people watching. Hello, my phone.
Hello, Collie. How are you this morning? Right, so let's get on to it, because then we're going to be like 40 minutes late and as usual.
I can't see the comments coming up. Can you see them on your phone?
Yes, I can on the computer. I don't have it on the phone.
Okay, all right, perfect. Fabulous.
Collie says she's great this morning.
Good.
Great.
Good.
Right, so today we wanted to have a little conversation about about what Rebecca is doing and her work, which is working with people who suffered loss. And considering the year that we've been through, I think that it is a good topic to discuss. What do you think? And if you have any questions, please fire on, and I will read them for you. But first, I'm going to ask you lots of questions now, because this loss is a big thing. You can have lots of losses in your life, and we probably lose things every day. So what are some of those losses that people need support with? Because you don't need support with all the losses in your life, do you? But there are certain things that are a bit more difficult.
Absolutely. And loss is huge, and I think we don't actually realize how much loss we experience in our life. And we brush loss aside a lot of the time. We assume loss is bereavement and divorce, so the two ones that people automatically assume loss is about and grief is about. But actually, loss, we can lose our norm. I mean, now during lockdown, we've lost our norm, we've lost our social lives. But there are things like house moves. Loss is created when something changes. So if you've moved house, it could be really exciting. It could be a big new adventure, but you're still leaving behind a part of your life and a house you've maybe lived in for a long time. So there is a loss there that can cause grief. Even marriage can cause loss. So again, we assume it's something really amazing, exciting, and you're marrying the love of your life and you're going to start a new chapter, but it could mean moving out of your parents' house. It could be moving out of a flat with friends, and you're changing your life. Change creates loss, which creates grief. So there are lots of things, that loss of limbs, loss of health, loss of finances, loss of job. There's so many things that we don't associate with loss and grief, and unfortunately these things do negatively accumulate, and can cause us emotional issues that we don't even realize are there. So I do look at loss in quite a big way, and I do speak to people, even people who are expecting loss of a loved one. Maybe they've estranged with their children or parents. That is a huge loss. And I do have quite a few clients actually who come to me because their relationship with their parents is really turbulent, really difficult, and they've already felt that loss even though they're still alive. So loss is, it's a big...
It is. It's I don't know how you navigate it, but the other thing that I want to ask is, from all this big umbrella of loss, what is that you specifically help your clients with? Because I presume it's not everything, because it's a lot.
Yeah.
So what are the things that you support them with?
Well, a lot of my clients, I have experienced bereavement, and I've obviously experienced my own bereavement with being widowed 6.5 years ago, and then losing my father about 14 months ago. So my experience, my personal experience, and my sort of main area of specializing in is with bereavement. Although that doesn't, I do have clients who come to me for other losses. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it will be, so when people have been bereaved, they are often sent to a counsellor. They are given lots of advice by the NHS and by other people, and they quite often follow that advice, and it can be helpful, but it's not always what people need. It's what other people think they need. So really what I do is I sort of help pick up the pieces when they've gone through that stage of doing all the things they should be doing. Then I help them and educate them with the action steps to actually heal from the pain that comes with grief. So the memories of loss create a huge amount of pain that can actually be crippling to navigate life. So I know for me, I very much felt like sometimes memories, sometimes things that my son did could actually trigger the memories, the emotions, the pain, so much so that I could have 2 weeks of not being able to function. Now, that wasn't all the time, but especially in the early stages of grief, that was a really big deal. And not being able to function when I had a very small sick child, I still had, a house to run, and, finances to manage, life to figure out. And there was so much going on that I couldn't afford to not be functioning for 2 weeks. And I think there are so many people out there that, it's not just about the grief and the loss. That's not the only impact that happens when you lose somebody. There's so many secondary losses that you have to navigate through. So really, it's when you've stopped being bombarded with those first few, it varies for people, weeks, months, whatever it may be, that period of time, then I'm then really there to help you heal, rather than just analyze your loss and be aware, help you heal from that pain, and then take it that step further to navigate what's next. You know, who are you? What are you going to do next in your life? How can you stop being your loss? Because I know that's, the loss can consume you.
Yeah, of course. Because we've studied together coaching and health coaching, and you've kind of moved from health coaching towards helping people with loss and life coaching. So how do you mix them together? How do you?
So I suppose this came from my story, really. So I did the health and life coaching that I originally trained in. It really helped me to figure out where I was going and what I was doing. But what I also realized from doing that was that I was using a lot of mindfulness techniques to support myself before I did the health and life coaching, and to support myself through. I had an amazing counselor for 4 years, and we talked a lot. There was a lot of awareness about what was going on with me, from my grief, my relationships with people. I was isolating through my grief. I did lose relationships with people for lots of different reasons. Nothing bad, just either my circumstances weren't, the whole death conversation wasn't something they could cope with, and the fact that I was isolating. So people were unsure what I did or didn't want, and sometimes it was easier just not to see people, and for people not to have to deal with my huge amount of emotion. So there was lots of things going on, and the health coaching and life coaching, as well as the mindfulness, supported me to figure out who I was, where I was going, and start living again. So the actual healing part, healing from the pain of grief, I found much later on. But the fact that the mindfulness and the health and life coaching had supported me through probably 4 or 5 years of my grief, it only really triggered when I'd finished my training, how much that had supported me and helped me get back into life and living. So it was really important for me to put the two together and help people heal from that pain of grief, but then actually take it a step further and, you know, figure out life, navigate what's next, be able to get past social anxiety. That was a huge issue for me. Work through that and be able to kind of go out there, get themselves a job, think clearly. There is a brain fog that comes with grief, and it can be quite overwhelming. So managing the emotions and being able to function normally, that all gets taken away when you're grieving. And even now, like I'm nearly 7 years widowed, and there are still moments where something will happen with maybe my son at school, and I'll sort of be triggered of, oh, I wish my husband had seen this. I wish they could experience that. I wish they had that relationship together. And that can be quite a big trigger. But whereas it used to stop me functioning, I now have the tools to manage my emotions, shift my emotional and physical state to be able to carry on through the day. So they actually go hand in hand really well. The sort of the grief therapy, the healing side, and moving through life, because life doesn't stop just because your life has stopped and somebody else's life has literally stopped. The world doesn't stop, and you can only stop for a certain period of time. Like you can only take, I think in the workplace, you can have like 3 weeks off or something. That's it. That is it.
I think NHS gives you 3 days.
Well, yeah, for some things they do. But if you break an arm, I heard this the other day, if you break an arm, you can have about 3 months off. But if you're going through bereavement, it is weeks. It's just, our priorities are mad, and you kind of think the second year of loss can actually be harder for a lot of people because it's that reality year. So the first year of being bereaved, you just keep going on adrenaline, on shock, and the second year it's reality. So actually you kind of need people to step in and support you in that second year again. That support doesn't stop.
Yeah. So you said earlier that people come to you maybe a few weeks, a few months after the loss happens, after they go through all the whatever counseling or whatever the NHS is recommending. What do they come to you for? When they come to you, what is the main complaint? Is it like, I still can't, get rid of that pain, and I would like to feel a bit more free, or I can't function out, I can't think straight, or I don't want to socialize with people, I want to hide under a bed and cry myself to sleep? What is it that those main few complaints that you see more often?
Yeah, most people don't know. Most people come to me and they actually don't know what they want to be different. They just know that they want something to be different. They know that they're still feeling the pain. They are still living in brain fog. They are struggling to get back out into the world. They're struggling to communicate. Sometimes they can't communicate very clearly with themselves, let alone with other people. Some people are terrified of going into new relationships if it's been a partner that they've lost. Some people want to actually be able to support their children through the emotional experience of loss and bereavement. So a lot of the time people don't know, but what it often turns out to be is that they are carrying this pain and this weight around with them, and they are starting to become their loss and their grief, and they do want that to shift. They want to feel better. They don't want to be sad every day, all day. They want to not feel guilty for actually living again. Guilt is a huge thing when it comes to grief. So that probably, I don't know, but that probably doesn't explain it very well. Most people don't know why
that is a thing, because you do. I think with some things in life, when you don't know, you have that feeling of being a bit lost, maybe a bit confused.
Yeah.
And there's a question that you need to ask, but you don't know what the question is.
Yeah.
There's something you need to be looking for, but you don't know what that thing is, but it's missing, and that somehow in your brain you're searching for it.
Yeah.
That's how I see the I don't know.
Yeah.
And then, if they come to you and say, this is what happened, I don't know, what that means. So you can guide them to ask the right question or find the thing that they're looking for, and they don't know what it is.
Absolutely. And often it is, there's quite a few things. I know when I felt that I don't know what I want, but I want something to be different, better, or more, is often how I describe it. Is that I suppose I'd been through those 4 years of counselling, and my counsellor was amazing. I still love her now. She's I don't see her now, but she was a little bit like a mother figure. We'd just sort of just bonded really well, and had to keep that sort of professional level because we'd spent so much time together. But I knew I'd got to the point with her that I talked and talked and talked, and I had no more talking to do. A lot of the time we weren't even talking about my husband or my grief. We'd started talking about all sorts of other areas of life, and it was bringing up an awareness, and it was getting curious about things, and that was really helpful. But it was always sort of, I felt like we started this journey and then it stopped. We started looking at things and then it stopped. There was never the action steps to stop hurting. There was never the action steps to change things in my life, to make things better. It was more a personal awareness. So it was really helpful, but I knew that I needed to take that next step to start shifting my life, to change things on a more, for me to be proactive in changing my life. And that's a lot of what I do with people, is not only go through the process of healing the pain of their grief. Grief doesn't go away, unfortunately. Once you've experienced grief, it's part of you, it's who you are, but it doesn't have to be painful. So to give people the action steps to move through that pain and come out the other side of that and live with their grief in a way that they can have joy and meaning and fulfillment back in their life is really important to me, because that was something that I knew my husband would want for me. I knew he wouldn't want me to live in this really sad, negative place. So I feel really passionate about helping people get to that place. But then I also knew that I wanted to have friends. I wanted to get back out there. I'd gone past the stage of, I'm never going to meet anyone again. My life is going to be second best forever. I'm just going to be miserable. I don't really want to live, but I've got a small child, so I will just get through it and I will figure it out for him. I was surviving, not thriving or even living. And so to be able to help people to get to that place where I very much feel I'm at now, life, okay, lockdown's been a bit interesting, but my life is good. My life is really good. I've dated, I've got an amazing child, I've got an amazing house. My life is not what it was 6 years ago.
It's I find it difficult. I find it what's the word? Yes, I think difficult to speak to people who are in that situation when it's then immediately, and there's all those emotions and all the hurt, and sometimes that nothing you say is going to make any difference at all, and you do want to say something, you want to do something, but there isn't much that one can do to, I don't know, you want to take that pain away, you want to, and there isn't. So if you are in that situation, if you have a friend who is suffering from loss, and it's something really that happened recently, and maybe they do feel like having a conversation, maybe they do feel like being in your presence and talking to you, what would you recommend we do for them? How can we make it not uncomfortable, and how can we make it easy and supportive towards them?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people find death, grief really hard. I mean, people find emotions day to day hard. How many times do we, if you get caught unawares with your emotions, like say you're in the middle of the high street somewhere and something's caught you and you're about to burst into tears, you wouldn't do it. Most people would not do it. They would hold it all together until they got in their car or were back home. We don't like displaying emotions. We feel uncomfortable with just day-to-day stuff, let alone if it's something like grief and death. So I totally understand that. And I think before I'd experienced it, I felt awkward. I didn't know what to say. So that is totally normal, but we don't have to say something all the time. And you certainly don't have to fix anything. There is nothing you can do to fix it unless you can magically bring the person back. So I think that's a really important first point, is don't try or feel like you have to fix the situation. You can't. And so to be emotionally honest is really important. With grief and loss, we go for the intellectual truths, which can be really hard. So by that I mean, in time you'll feel better. Maybe that's true, but that's not very helpful to somebody, and actually can be I found that quite hard to swallow. When somebody said to me, in time you'll feel better, my response to that was basically a few swear words followed by, time is never going to make it okay that my husband's dead and my son will never know his dad. So actually, when somebody said that to me, I just wanted to punch them in the face. And I don't consider myself an aggressive person, but it made me really angry.
Yeah.
So I think to turn around to somebody and say, I have no idea how you're feeling. And I don't know what to say, but I'm here. And tell me about your partner. Tell me about your mom. Tell me about your child. Who, don't be afraid to ask, because you're not reminding somebody of how sad they are or what they've lost. They haven't forgotten. You never forget. I still now am very aware that I don't have my husband and I don't have my dad, and they were huge figures in my life, and so important. I will never forget that they're gone. But actually, if somebody asks me, like, tell me about your dad, or tell me about your husband, it actually lights me up. I find joy in talking about them. I like remembering. And I think a lot of people who've been bereaved, they do. The people I've spoken to, they want to talk about their loved ones. They want to keep that memory alive and fresh. So I suppose don't try and fix, because you can't. Don't be afraid to ask about their loved one, and be emotionally honest. Literally say you don't know what to say and you don't know what to do. Offer support. Don't ask, what can I do to help? Because a lot of the time they'll be in a brain fog. And again, for me, that was one I was like, unless you can bring my husband back, I cannot think about anything that would be helpful.
Yeah.
And I remember my aunt and uncle used to drop me frozen meals. Like, they wouldn't even knock on the door. They would just leave frozen meals with the full instructions of what it was, whether it needed to go in the freezer or the fridge, how to cook it. Everything would be written on, the like Chinese takeaway boxes.
Yeah.
So they'd write that on the top. And quite often I'd sort of get a text going, oh, have you found the meal outside? Or I'm just dropping one off or whatever. And that was really helpful. I do know people who...
That is really good. You didn't have to have a conversation with them. They didn't have to be uncomfortable, but they were helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And, maybe you sort of say to somebody, well, I've got an hour next week, this time, this day, and I can come and do your hoovering. Or would you like me to take your child for a walk? Or how about I bring you some fruit, pizza, chocolate and wine? Do you know what I mean? Just be really specific, because then it's easier for me to say, oh, actually, no, could I have bananas, orange juice and a gallon of beer, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Than to go, oh, what do I want? Oh, I don't know, I can't think. And literally I just have a brain fog. And from other people I know who've been bereaved, it's a similar situation. Other people thrive on being able to do stuff in their house. So maybe can I clean your car? Can I mow your lawn? There's lots of different things, but I think if you can work out what you can offer and what you are happy to do, because sometimes I'd say things that I'd really needed and people would be like, oh, actually, no, I can't do that. And I'd be like, oh, well, I can't think of anything else, so don't worry. So think about what you can offer, what you are prepared and happy to do, when you can do it, and kind of just give all the information and wait.
So rather you come out and say, I can come and play with your child for 2 hours so you can have a long bath or nap or whatever, then how can I help you? Because they might be in that brain fog when they can't think about anything, and then they say, oh, nothing, or I don't know, and then you end up not supporting them because it's just miscommunication.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really good. That's really good advice. Now, from the point of view of the person who had the loss, do you find that people, I don't even know how to ask this, because people are so different and maybe there isn't a solution or a rule, but is it helpful for people to be alone and process their emotions? Is it helpful for people to have someone to speak with Is it more helpful for people to just go straight into counseling or come straight to you? Is it good to stay in bed for 5 weeks and cry yourself? What do you know, because people are so different, and their response is so different, and the emotions have different levels in everybody. And I remember when my dad died, I cried for weeks. I used to go every week at the cemetery and just sit there and cry myself to hours and hours, because I was lost. I was 16, I was bloody lost, and there was no one to guide me through it. So, with age, you maybe have a different approach to things, but even for people who are really young, and they go through those things, did it help me? Um, I don't know if it did. It was a place of silence, and where nobody was asking me, why are you crying? Stop crying. So it was probably helping. Um, so yeah, what would you say to those people?
I think you're right. It is totally different for everybody. Everybody's grief is unique. So you will never have the same relationship with anybody. It's quite common when you lose a pet, people sort of say, oh, well, we'll replace the pet at the weekend. We'll get another dog, we'll get another fish, whatever it is. You can't replace those relationships, whether it be an animal or a person. They will always be different. You're not going to have, if you get another dog, it's not going to be the same as the dog you've had. So because the relationships are so different, the grief will be different. And it's not even the time frame you've spent with somebody that makes grief more intense. Time is irrelevant. People who've lost a baby, whether it be a miscarriage or after the baby's been born, their grief isn't less because they didn't physically hold the child, or they only had days or weeks with the child. It doesn't work like that at all. So your relationship with your loss makes your grief unique to you. So it is very, very different. So because of that, and because of your, who you're surrounded with and how you are as a person will also make your grieving process different. So this is where communication is really important, and it can be a really hard time to communicate what you want, and this is where I bring the mindfulness into my program and what I do with people, because getting aware of what you need and want will support you through your grieving process. And that can be very difficult to do on your own and know what the right tools are, or what works for you. So we also have this there's lots of things that we say and do in society that is acceptable that are actually quite difficult for grievers. So I don't know if you've heard it when people say, oh, just give them a minute, they'll be all right in a bit. People go to their room to cry. It is, in my life, it's been sort of a generational thing that said this, and that is shifting now. People aren't sort of sending people away to go and cry on their own, but it does still happen. And I know that I very much felt like I should be not showing my emotions publicly. I should keep it to myself, which actually wasn't helpful, but it was the only way I knew. So when you're grieving, when you're sad, you need that physical. As humans, we need to have that support. But our story, our life, our beliefs can make that difficult. So I think if you can be with other people, even if they don't need to say anything, just to hug you and hold you, that physical contact on your skin calms the nervous system. Yeah. So you might not feel it immediately, but you will have, it will support your body to help you just, well, as I say, calm the nervous system, make you feel a little less overwhelmed and emotional, and just bring you to a slightly more balanced point, which again is really helpful, because especially with grief, the emotions are full on and intense a lot. So if you can keep bringing yourself down to a more balanced place, it does help the body to process the emotions, look after itself, function properly. That heightened emotion does mess with the body. So I personally would say it's really important to have people around you and support you, but I also know that isn't easy, which is why that's something I help people with. But like you say, grief is very different, so people need very different things, and I think it's really important just to look internally and be emotionally honest with yourself, with what you need, and be aware that that's in the moment. It's so when people ask, what should I say? Quite often I will say, ask people how they are doing right now, because right now you can feel one thing, and in 5 minutes, an hour, the next day, you can be feeling something totally different. And that's okay. That's how grief is. So yeah, if you be in the moment with how you're feeling and go with what you need in the moment.
You know how with anxiety, for example, we tell people to sit in their anxiety and feel it. Feel it in your body and try to identify the feeling that is causing that. I think there's a feeling behind it, and then behind that feeling there's a thought, and try to identify what it is that is causing that sensation in your body, that you feel like you're going to die, but you're never dying, but you feel like that. Do you recommend people to sit with their grief as well and just feel that in their body and just be with it?
It's different, because anxiety can come from all sorts of different things that have happened. You know why you're grieving.
Right.
You've lost someone, you've lost something, you've had a change in your life, you know why you're grieving. So it is different. And also anxiety can come from grief. You can feel anxiety from grief. So I know a lot of people who've tried to deal with anxiety after a bereavement, and actually it's the grief they need to deal with, not the anxiety. So there's different stages. There is, and this is with the emotions of grief rather than anxiety. So I don't necessarily advise straight away that people kind of just sit with the emotions of grief. Yes, you do need to process it, and there is a process, but a lot of it's about releasing and letting yourself cry, letting yourself do certain things. And there's lots of exercises that I do with people to help them process their grief, but it is different to processing anxiety.
Yeah.
There's similar tools, but there's also different tools, and I think they are different things. And people can sit with their grief and can be with those emotions at different stages. It's I suppose, again, this comes down to the fact that people grieve differently, and some people can grieve for years and years and years. Some people grieve for a short period of time. Some people, the loss was expected, so they grieve before the person dies, and everyone is different. So it does have to be dealt with in different ways for the individual. Ultimately, yes, when you get through my longer program, we do definitely sit with emotions and we process those emotions, and it is very similar to anxiety, but that can be really, really full on for people at the beginning of their grief journey. And actually processing what's happened is often where we start, rather than trying to delve in and sit with the emotions, because it's too much. It's too much. I couldn't cope with my emotions at all. I totally had to step back from them to be able to look after my child and all the legal stuff that goes on with grief.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other stuff that you have to go through. I mean, literally the next day that after he died, I had solicitors phoning and legal things you have to do, and it's very full on. And I had to leave my house. And actually I used to go up to the churchyard where he's now buried, and I would just find a quiet spot and I would break down because it was too much. I couldn't, if somebody had told me that I had to be with my emotions in those early even months, I would have literally said, I can't do it too much.
That makes
so
sense.
It's just different for the individual.
Yeah, okay, that's why I'm asking, because I don't know. And if anyone who's watching has questions, I guess any kind of questions, it doesn't matter if they seem silly because I think we don't know. We're not educated into this process and into this part of our lives. We're not educated. And with the Western, um, education that we get, we fear death, and we are scared of death, and it's a sad time in life. In other parts of the world, it's different.
Yeah.
But here where we are, it is a sad moment, and we fear it. So if you have any questions that seem a bit silly, or anyway, ask Rebecca. And if you feel like you want to ask a question that is you can't ask publicly, you can, yeah, private message you.
Absolutely, private message me. Most people do. My Facebook pages and things are not active because it's a personal thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do the private messaging, which is totally fine. And
even if it's just a question and you're curious about something and you have a query, just message Rebecca, and she will, I'm talking for you, be very happy to reply and support you in any way. Now I want to, before we, because I have so many questions, but I know we've been talking for 40 minutes, so I'm going to stop asking questions. One last question is, how do you work with your clients? Do you work on a program? Is it a few weeks? Is it a few months? How does that work? Do you have different programs? Do you move them from helping them with loss into a life coaching program to support them after that? Share.
Yeah, so just going back to what you said before about the way we aren't educated about grief. And I think that's really important to acknowledge, because we are taught how to get things. We're taught how to gain things. We're taught how to get a job. We're taught how to get a mortgage. We fear change and we fear loss. And so this is part of what I do. So I have a couple of ways that it works depending on where people are at. And again, it's very individual, which is why I have conversations with people to find out where they're at and what they need. But I have a program that supports people specifically with the pain that comes from the memories of loss, which is an action step. It's more of an educational program than it's not a talking therapy at all. So I teach people how to manage that side of their grief and the pain of grief. But then I have, that's a 7-week program that I do. Then I have a 12-week program, which is that as well as the life coaching, which the two for me, that's where I see the most change and that's what helped me. I've kind of taken all the best bits of what I learnt over the years and all the different types of support that's available and sort of put it into one program. I do life coaching separately for people who've been bereaved, but a lot of people still have healing to do from that pain, which is why I've created my main program is the 12-week program from it's mindful grief, healing and coping. So we do the two. Because it does also teach us how to manage loss in the future as well. So when you've done either the my 7-week program or the 12-week program, you will actually come out of that being able to manage your losses that you've had in the future. So it's not just you will actually gain tools for later down the line if you experience loss again, which I think is really important.
Well, yes, because it's inevitable.
Yeah. And I think we let grief accumulate. I didn't realize when I did my program originally. So I trained with the grief recovery method and for the healing of the pain side of things. And I didn't realize that I was holding on to the loss and the grief from a house move when I was 10. And I remember thinking, actually, I've spoken about that quite a lot as an adult as well as a child. And I actually held on to so much grief. I moved at age 10, I moved counties, I moved away from my school, my friends, everything. And it was everything I knew at the time. I only knew what I knew then. And I was moved from all of it. from everything I knew at the time, I was moved to somewhere else. And it didn't break me at all, but it affected me for 30 years, like, which is crazy. And I had no idea until I did this program myself, which is why I kind of feel so passionate about it, because it's been a game changer for me.
Yeah, but it is. We were talking the other day. We were talking about hidden thoughts. You know, we think certain thoughts, and maybe we try to change our mindset, and we put those better thoughts on top, and then if you look deeper, you'll find the ugly ones that are still lurking there in the dark as they're not dealt with. And I guess it's the same with emotions. We change, we grow up, we become adults, the life changes, and we have different experiences, and we have different emotions, and many of them all the time. But there are certain things that are left somewhere deep inside, and if you don't, deal with them, you carry them along, and they do influence our lives. Even if they are buried somewhere deep down, they still do influence our lives.
Oh, I want to move to France, but I'm terrified.
I know you're crazy, but
I'm terrified of moving to France because I feel I'm going to mess my son up because of what I went through of moving at a young age. And actually, that's my story, not his. And it was because I didn't have the tools to manage that. And again, that is something else I do with people, is help them to understand how to communicate with children. And I kind of think, I have these tools. So actually, whether we move to France or not, I've used them. Used them with my son going back to school. I used them with my son when his grandfather died. So yeah, I mean, I just kind of think to be emotionally aware and have those tools is so important for so many different areas of life. We avoid our emotions, don't we? Even with death, we say somebody's, oh, they've gone to sleep, or they've gone to be with God, or they've passed away. We don't actually say somebody's died.
and we don't say that to kids, do we?
And actually, that is more, children can understand that. If I remember, my son said to me when I told him that his grandfather had died, and him and his grandfather were like this, it was just him and I, and I said, oh, grandpa's gone to be with daddy. And he said to me, so when's he coming back? And that was a real kind of like, oh, I've just actually made this 10 times worse for myself as well. Because if I said grandpa had died, yes, I'd only found out, hours beforehand as well. So that would have been really, really hard. And it was really hard. But actually, I wouldn't have had to deal with the questions that came up afterwards from my son that actually made it harder for me. And then I had to go deeper into explaining it all. And I should have just kept it simple. But I think I was trying to protect myself. I was trying to protect him. And actually, I was doing the opposite for both of us.
I think we need to do another live when you talk about
I'm waffling
with kids, because I have other millions of questions about that. And I don't even have kids. Imagine the people who have children and have gone through loss, and they have their questions. So, because we were talking about, I'm aware of time, my gosh, we were talking about education earlier. I know you have a little meetup group where you do some webinars and workshops with people.
Yeah, so I've just joined Meetup. I'm still learning, but yeah. So no, I don't know if people have been on Meetup. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure how it works. I'm there under Becca Worthington, but I'm on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. So I think maybe I'll put the links on here, because
why don't you put the links under the video, and put the links to the
You're
meetup.
asking me technical questions, and what I'm like with technology.
No, but I'm sure that I would like to learn, and I'm sure, and I don't think that I'm in a moment in my life where I need to deal with any kind of loss, but I would like to learn, and I'm sure there are other people who would like to learn more about it. So if you do those workshops and webinars and talks on loss, I think it's good for people to know where to find you.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, YouTube, Facebook, and as I say, Meetup, I'm about to start doing talks on there. So yeah, I will put the links in the group here. And but Becca Worthington, I'm under, if anyone sort of has a search on the internet for me, my website and things will come up. It's fairly easy to remember. It's beworthy at .co.uk. I say it's really easy to remember, then I have to think about it. But yeah, www.beworthy.co.uk. And as I say, for those of you watching on Facebook, I'm there. And yeah, I do quite a lot in my group about all of this, and lots of talks and information giving.
We'll put everything underneath the video, so people can find you, find the group, find the meetup, find everything.
Yeah,
I think, yeah, it's really important, and this was a yeah, uplifting conversation for a Friday. No, it was really good, because it shouldn't be a sad conversation. It shouldn't be a negative conversation.
Oh, when I talk to businesses, most of it is ridiculous. It's not a sad conversation at all. And like you say, it shouldn't be.
No, it shouldn't be.
It is life, unfortunately, but it is life, and we all will go through it. And yeah, we need to be more open to it, I feel, for ourselves and for other people.
Yeah.
Collectively, it's really important that we're emotionally honest and open, and can deal with the D word, can deal with death.
Yes, because, well, we can't escape it, can we?
But I appreciate talking about it, and sharing the information, really, and hopefully my mission is just to help one person just feel a little bit better on their grief journey, and lessen that pain, that loss, and that make their journey just that little bit easier to navigate back into normal life, and take their loved one with them, remember and smile, and be able to function and live whilst carrying their loved one with them.
That's so nice. Thank you so much, and thank you for letting me ask you a million questions and silly questions. And I always ask you silly questions, but it is, when you don't know, you don't know, and it's better to ask than just have a wrong thought or idea or information in your head. Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone watching. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have any questions, remember, write in the comments, or just talk Rebecca online. You'll find her. Just, absolutely. Do.
I'm always here.
Talk each other. Have an amazing weekend, and see you next Friday. Oh, yes. Next Friday. Yes, we are.
Yeah, I'll probably talk to you in about 10 minutes, but but yes, I will see you next Friday. And everybody else, thank you for watching. Take care. Lots of love.
Bye.